Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Salt the Streets podcast, the show where we discuss news, government, and culture and how it pertains to you, the individual, and your natural rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As always, I am that big bird-looking fella they call Colin, and I am, once again, and as always, joined by my co-host, brother-in-arms, the Nero of Neoprene, the original Salt of the Street himself, Donovan. How are you today?
I am excellent, sir. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. We've got a extra special show coming up today, something we haven't done yet. We're going to have a guest coming in mid-cast for parts 3 and 4 today, which means we're going to have a little bit different camera setup going on.
Yep.
But it's going to be fun. It's going to be new. And, I had a little bit of a chance to talk with our guest last night. His name is Jake Lyons. Is a fellow you knew back in high school and haven't really talked to since then.
Yeah, I've actually went to school with him starting in elementary school. Same as Josh.
Yeah, all the way back.
Josh, yes.
But yeah, I had a really good chat with him last night just to kind of get all the technical issues worked out and stuff like that. And I can just say I am very, very, very excited for when he comes on. We're going to have an amazing chat about all sorts of stuff. But in that vein, good sir.
Yes.
Give me time and date. And what are we talking about today?
Yes, sir. Today is Saturday, July 23rd, 2002, episode 130 of Salt of the Streets. And it is 12:07 p.m.
Hot
today.
dog.
We have our local topics right off the top. So I have a couple here, and you sent me one last night. So we have some things that we're going to talk about. In part 2, we're going to do what I was calling, a similar to what you have here. I call it kind of our State of the Union. Mm-hmm. It's kind of what we're going after, So
I felt like a good way to phrase it, right?
Exactly, yeah. So we're going to talk about, I have some different things here. Inflation, Ukraine, January 6th. There was an assault weapons ban that moved from committee into the full House. So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Oh, shit. I don't think I had a Thomas Massey clip I was going to queued up for that when he was talking about it. I might be able to find that. It's pretty good.
So, and then in part 3, like Colin said, we have our friend Jake Lyons who's going to come in here. He approached us about coming on the show, which is something we're open to. If anybody has anything they want to come on here and talk to us about, feel free. We're open to doing this. So he's someone that listens to the show, and so he reached out to us and asked to come on the show to have some discussions with us. He asked us originally about where our morals came from and the basis of our principles and stuff. And it's like, well, I'm gonna have to think a lot about that and get back to you. And then just recently he approached us with another topic after he agreed to come on here. So we have some big things we're going to talk to him about, and then of course part 4 is the grab bag. We have many different topics here. Whether or not we get to that, as you can see last time with Josh Keaton, we never got to the actual grab bag, which is fine. When it comes to guests and stuff like that, the scheduling of the show is a little more fast and loose. So those are the things we're going to run through today. Donald Trump said that he's going to announce, so we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the officially unofficial announcement that he's going to announce at some point soon.
Yeah, exactly. So before we do that, I want to thank everybody, of course, for joining us. Bill, Bo, Deborah, you guys are incredible. Thank you for being back here again.
Yes.
I want to remind you, of course, to like, share this with your friends, comment on everything like you've already done here. You can find all of our other content on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, of course, Patreon, Salt of the Streets. Go there to the Patreon, subscribe, help us make more, better content just like this. Right before this, we did what we called the review preview for the book club. The book club book this month was 1776 by David McCullough, and next month it is going to be this book here. It's called Don't Hurt People and Don't Take Their Stuff by Matt Keeby.
So a libertarian manifesto.
A libertarian manifesto, yeah. And this was a different review preview. It was a written piece, mostly written piece that I did, which I actually just tweeted the actual document itself out on my Twitter at Salt of the Street on Twitter. If you want to go read the written portion of the document, it is there, or of the video, it's there. We have our own personal social media. Like I said, I'm at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram, and calls it Big Bird Offie on both those things. Beer show, book club, newsletters, all those things. Yeah, newsletter on the last day of the month, so $5 a month. Get to the newsletter. It's a written piece by Colin and I individually. And I do want to remind everybody, I always mean to do this at the beginning, if we have to do it, to evaluate and adjust your relationship with the CCP as much as you can. Every episode, I mean to do this in the beginning and always forget to do it. So that's it, right off the top.
I like it.
Evaluate and adjust your relationship with the CCP. So
powerful.
Yeah. With that, Colin, let me ask you this. Okay. Right in the vein of what we just did with the review preview. Okay. How likely do you think a national divorce / a civil war is? Or do you believe that a shift to a new system is possible, a la the Libertarian Party, the Mises Caucus, things of this vein, right?
Ooh.
And to let you think more, to provide more context, the Libertarian Party, the Mises Caucus specifically within the Libertarian Party, is obviously a third-party option within the United States political system. So they obviously see the system itself still as a viable opportunity, but use this party as a means to gain power and shift the system in the way they can that will better benefit the people of America.
So initially, right off the bat, I think I want to separate it into two categories. I want two different answers, really.
Yes,
I think the greatest chance we have for changing the current system that we have is via the Libertarian Party and its, astronomical rise in popularity over the last few years. I think that's probably I don't know if it's the most possible or the most likely scenario to happen, but that is probably the best alternative vein that doesn't involve some kind of, separation of the nation,
A violent
balkanization,
revolution.
But at this point, I don't know if it's hard to gauge. It's hard to gauge the everyman's perspective on a national divorce or civil war. I know the concept of a civil war now is way more likely than has ever existed since the last Civil War. We'll put it that way. I don't know. Again, I think after your preview piece today, I've got some other things to think about. And as per the usual, I'm probably going to shift my written piece this week to kind of build off of that, just because I think it's more in the vein. My original written piece is basically going to be stuff we talked about in segment 2 today. And so I think I'm going to shift away from that because I'm going to cover everything I want to cover today. And I think that's more topical. But I don't, at the end of the day, I don't know what is more likely, because for a civil war to pop off in some fashion, there needs to be some form of greater organization involved, because it needs to be widespread enough. Eventually, it can start with one, with two parties, and then it eventually has to be adopted and spread over a grand scale. And I'm not saying that's not possible. I just haven't really gamed out what that might look like, which hence the piece, I think, at the end of the month. But it is definitely more possible today than ever. I don't see national divorce being possible. There's a few hard questions in that generally revolves around nuclear weapons and the ownership of those. And I don't see like a USSR style Cold War. Okay, this is how we're going to split up the nukes. And, after that whole era went and, all the nations kind of agreed to just have those nuclear states are just going to stay nuclear. Nobody else really gets them, all that kind of stuff. There could be some treaties like that might occur, but with the state of society as it is, I don't see that happening without some serious bloodshed going on. And, nobody wants that to happen. And if they do, they don't know what they're talking about. But, the irrevocable differences that we find ourselves having today, the ability to agree to disagree has ceased to exist. And states are becoming more hardline every day regarding those types of issues, say like
Right.
around abortion and things like that. And there's no compromise that both sides are willing to have. But the makeup of the people that are willing to compromise, I'm not aware of their numbers yet. I don't know if it's the vast majority of people or if it's a minority of people. Because those are the people that are going to matter. Mostly because, as we saw in like the Revolution and in the Civil War, the vast majority of people don't participate in the fighting.
Right,
Most of the
it's
people,
estimated 3% of the people at the time involved in the actual fighting of the Revolutionary War on the side of the rebels.
Yeah, and the Civil War much different because then you actually had national armies and things like that. So
Right,
it was a lot higher numbers.
I don't
but
know
even
if I
then,
said civil. I meant revolutionary.
You said
war.
revolutionary.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, it's because everybody always likes to think about our previous Civil War. And I think we've discussed this. I don't know if we've discussed
Civil
it
War
on
One, I've started to call it.
Right. And because that's the way I think of it. And you mentioned it in the piece, and I know we've talked about it off air. I don't know if we talked about it on the show, but if there is going to be another Civil War, in the United States of America, it is not going to even come close to resembling the first Civil War.
Right.
It'll look a lot more like every other civil war in history around the globe. It'll be groups of militia and organizations having guerrilla warfare with essentially against the state at that point. And, you know, take a look at Africa, Mogadishu, and everywhere in the Middle East, and like all these different places where civil wars are essentially constant.
Yeah.
That's what it would look like in my mind. And then how do you game that out? You know, there's a lot of things there, but I think the chances are higher than ever, because people are at wit's end. And the major concerning point that makes me think that is the economic situation. It is bad. It is worse than anybody has seen. Most people alive today have not been in a worse economic spot than today. And on that level, too, you combine that with the societal divide, the continual deterioration of the governing bodies from the state level all the way up to the federal level. It's not a good thing when I look at it as a whole. I don't understand how this could end any way but bad, unless there was some kind of a miracle and a third party like a Mises Caucus-led Libertarian Party essentially comes in and then starts making changes. Severe changes would need to be required, and even then you will see a rise in violence, but I don't know if it would burst into a nationwide divisional thing like that. So yeah, that's my answer to that.
That's good. Over here, Bilbo Swaggin says, the way the laws are being implemented based on political affiliation has already started the Civil War, but not in the traditional way we think of one. And I don't disagree. Yeah. And that's why I framed this question kind of, I guess not as specifically as possible, but around like a proper Civil War, national divorce, a separation of this country into multiple nations. Mm-hmm. And that is, as Colin referenced the preview video that we just did, that is a lot of what I talked about in there. So again, for more context on that, you can go to my Twitter, and I just tweeted that out. So it's the first thing at the top of my Twitter is the actual document that I used.
And I just liked and retweeted.
So there we go. That. It's the top of Colin's as well. So you can go to either one of our Twitters and you can find that document there. With that, we can break into some local stories.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So
can we start with mine?
Yes.
So this story in particular, I wanted to bring up. I don't have it pulled up right now in my tabs, because we've talked about it before. We talked about this one place in our local community called That One Place. Yes. It's a bar and restaurant in Port Orchard, Washington, that when the county-wide, statewide COVID lockdowns were mandated back in 2019, I want to say, I'm going to have to pull this up on the bookmarks, but back when that was first happened, they took a stance and said, we're not going to close our doors and stop feeding people.
Yes.
And so the state and the county began to come after them. And it was a series of fines per infraction. I think it was $11,000 per infraction.
I can read it to you. Actually, this is from the Kitsap Sun article.
Yes.
That One Place was assessed with $132,000 in fines by the state's Department of Labor and Industries for the violations. A citation that was affirmed by the Board of Industries Appeals Judge Jeffrey A. Friedman on July 6th after the restaurant in May appealed the findings. L&I had assessed That One Place owned by Richard Craig Kennedy a $12,000 fine for each of the 11 violations that occurred by providing indoor dining between the dates of January 6th and January 18th, 2021, in 12 days. So we got a violation every single day. They just continued to come back to his restaurant.
Yep. And ultimately, this led to them losing the court battle just recently. Yeah. And there is an appeals process that they are not looking to undergo because their legal counsel says there's no way you're going to win the appeal. And so they are...
Not in this state.
Yeah, so they are going to be closing their doors. They're selling their... And this is what I find so interesting about it. They're selling their restaurant to a nonprofit organization that specializes in getting... It's like a work release type of thing. They do work with prison inmates to fill the need of the local community. And so they're going to be bringing on people from the prison system out here to help get them work experience and life experience, and oh, that's flying away, which I think is a powerful thing. And they said that they are still in process of doing that, but they do refuse to sell to anybody else that's not willing to do the nonprofit work at this point.
To sell the restaurant.
Yeah.
They also, I know, like my mom, prior to working for the state, worked with adults with disabilities, and she was a job coach. So she would find jobs for adults with disabilities, and she had multiple clients that worked at that one place. That is an outlet for people who have difficulty finding employment other places. Which is
it's
huge,
an amazing community asset. I mean, it's fantastic. You're improving people's lives in an exponential manner at that point.
Yes.
I don't think it's news to anybody that the prison system essentially ruins your entire life, no matter how small the infraction is. Once you become a felon and you get out, your whole life has been dragged down in some fashion. It's going to be objectively harder for you to have a normal, successful life than the non-felon.
Undoubtedly. Even just in things like getting a job, getting an apartment, things like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Every aspect that is essential to your life, minus going to the grocery store to buy food. You're not barred from that, though the job that you need to get the income that you need to be able to pay for that, applying for a mortgage, applying for rent, all that stuff has background checks involved these days.
Right.
And
guns, your ability to defend yourself.
Yes. Yeah. You get that right. Stripped away most of the time.
Your ability to vote.
Yeah. Which, that's a whole nother thing right there. But it's not good. And it's a really sad thing to see that just because the state decides to, take on the role of a dictatorial nation and put out unconstitutional edict, because it's down in law in some capacity, there's no way around that in the court system.
Yeah.
Which I think speaks to when we were going through the Anarchist Handbook this week, that really interesting kind of the subjectivity of laws essay. I think it was one of the tail end ones, but this particular case got me thinking, I'm like, that's so fucked up, man. That is so wrong. That these people are run out of town for 2 years later. We're looking at this thing going like, well, obviously what harm did it truly do at this point?
For serving people indoors who wanted to eat indoors.
Yeah.
They were not forcing people or coercing them into their restaurant.
No, they knew full well. They could make a conscious decision as an adult citizen of the United States and a citizen of the state, and the state says no.
It outlines the coercive nature not only of the state itself, but of these laws to coerce these people into doing what they want.
Yep.
That these people are not. All they're doing is opening their doors, providing the ability for free market commerce for people to come in if they want to. If they want to spend their money, then they can do that. And instead, the state, like I said, coerces them out of this. No. We're going to fine you $12,000 every day. We're going to go out of our way to come to your restaurant every single day to ensure that you are still not following the laws that we have set down to get you to do what we want.
Yep, $132,000 in fines.
Yes.
And so they're packing up shop and they're moving. They think they said Arkansas.
And
Arkansas.
Arkansas. And this is the goal of the state with laws like this, is to either get you to submit or to walk away.
Yeah.
So they, like you said, they have the opportunity, they have the ability to appeal. It is literally not worth their time and effort, in their opinion, to try this, because they have been shown they will not win. They will not receive a fair shake. You know what I'm saying?
The justice system will overlook the blatantly unconstitutional nature of these edicts and just say, sorry.
Yep.
The state wins. So the reason I really wanted to talk about this is because this is just this is in our backyard, but it is something that is happening. We've heard anecdotal stories reported over the last couple of years about essentially the same thing happening in a plethora of other states. Everything from Staten Island, the Atlas Gym, and his owner to refuse to shut his doors down when he made the argument that the most important thing you could do is try to be healthy during COVID, and you're closing the one place where people can, to various restaurants. And, there's that gal in California who had to close down her restaurant, including the outdoor eating center, while she watched the movie studio set up right the fucking across the street, and the catering come by and just do their own goddamn thing. Yeah. Rules for thee, but not for me. It was a disgusting display of authoritarianism that is, unfortunately, we're still feeling the consequences today.
And it's why I think for so many people, the pandemic was an eye-opening experience, because so many of the things that happen behind us every day happened out in the open. It was impossible for us to avoid or to ignore anymore, because it was not only happening in front of us, but impeding into our own lives, impeding in your ability to run your business, your ability to try
or go to work.
Go to work, yeah. Your ability to do anything, to go to the store, to do anything. I mean, if depending on what state you are in, there were times here where they were limiting the amount of people that could go into stores at certain times. So if you wanted to go to a certain store, you're having to stand outside and wait to go inside to go to a fucking store.
Yeah, dude. I remember the lines at the Home Depot got me, man.
And I remember being at Lowe's and having a man at Lowe's stop a manager and say, I want to thank you specifically for not making people wait outside. Even though the lines were miles long indoors of Lowe's, they weren't capping the capacity of the store.
Yeah.
It was all insane. But,
so insane, dude.
Yeah, I remember at Sportsman's, people lining up, because the ammo run and shit like that.
Oh, yeah.
Lining up an hour ahead of time outside of Sportsman's.
Yeah, just to go get one box at 223 and 9 mil.
Because they were only letting fucking 50 people in the store at a time.
Yeah. I can see that happening again, but not for COVID-related reasons, we'll say. It'll just be for lack of fucking stock. Be rationing. I see the rationing coming on sooner rather than later.
Stock up on everything you can.
That's
what I'm saying. I don't know about all that. I just don't. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'll pontificate more about that when we get into segment 2 and supply chain stuff.
I think it's possible. I've heard all kinds of, Tim Pool talks about the same type of deal all the time. And it's not like an unfounded thing. I don't hear that and think that's crazy. I just don't. I follow my gut a lot with stuff like this when it comes to big world things of like, I don't know, this is just what I feel is going to happen, and that's where I start to go. And when I think about like mass food shortages, it doesn't tickle my gut the way that other things do. So that's not a valid way to be deciding what I think the future will be, but that's how I start down these pathways. And so I just don't get that gut feeling of I don't know. And maybe it's because I've not been through anything like that. And so it is what it is.
I mean, we're all going to suffer some form of normalcy bias at that point.
100%.
All of this would be unprecedented. And I think it's important, I should say, too. It's like not to fearmonger about mass food shortages, this and that and the other thing. But it would be, when you go to the store to pick up your normal round of grocery shopping or, there will be less options. There will be less on the shelves, and it'll probably be restocked in a couple days. But I experience this with Costco even right now. It's like if I go there, particularly one specific item, this canned dog food I get, which is the Costco Kirkland brand signature stuff. They run out of it all the time. But then you wait a day or two and you go back, it's restocked again. But the fact that it never used to be a thing in America. When a store stocked an item, generally speaking, they kept it in stock.
Yeah.
And for whatever the reasoning being, I can see more shortages as we go forward for a number of reasons. But I don't think it'll be like, well, there's no bread this week, guys.
No, and I think we would have to dig into particular products, because for me, that type of shit is more about supply lines than anything else. Because when I think about limitations and stuff like that, I feel like we're living that right now in the form of inflation. I don't think I don't, because I'm not digging deep into it. So that's partially my own fault, because I'm not hearing an in-depth explanation about these are why these products will not be available. I don't understand. There's a misstep for me. At what point are we just going to have less shit? Like why would we all of a sudden just have less shit when we aren't seeing an issue with supply chains like we were during COVID? By all manner of what we're seeing, those things are figuring themselves out. There are other things due to the conflicts outside of the nation that are being limited, metals and stuff like that, and that's why I would say particular products, the canned dog food, they probably don't have fucking cans. They probably don't have all of the cans in the world to can all the dog food.
And that would be my guess for that particular supply line. Because it's funny because even though we consume very, very similar things throughout the week and throughout the days, the avenues of, the rabbit holes that you will find yourself going down are different than the rabbit holes I go down, which I really appreciate, because it helps both of us, I think, get better informed, because we're splitting the workload, I feel, at that point.
Yeah.
But I think particularly in segment 2, we'll dig a little bit deeper into that kind of stuff and
stuff like that.
Yeah. And somewhere or other, I have to put it in here. I saw a I saw an article earlier today about Nancy Pelosi's husband investing in a particular company. For
the microprocessing company?
Yes, the semiconductors and stuff like that. And then I saw I think it was yesterday when they passed the funding for that. And then I was like, motherfucker, he did it again. Like a week before the bill got through, he bought $5 million in this company.
And she got asked about it. Did you see that?
I did
she
not.
got asked about it. They're like, has your husband ever invested, or have you ever given your husband a tip on investing? She's like, no. And turned the microphone and went away. No. And just turned it and went away. Of course not. Don't be fucking ridiculous. Not. Yeah.
That's
the
so
next
funny.
one, Bill Swaggins wants to know about my tattoo. So we'll
oh, yeah.
This camera here. Okay. So
the Seattle heartbeat.
Yep.
Yeah, how far can you twist?
Seattle.
There's the Space Needle.
Yep, and then it's this here. So yeah, there's the other side.
And I know I've asked you about it before, but I even forget the origins of it at this point.
No, this is just my first tattoo, and this is not even anybody's. This is just a free-handed EKG. I get asked that all the time. I was 18, so I didn't think enough into it to think like, oh, I should get, someone's fucking heartbeat. Like I just was like just a heartbeat, because I live for the Northwest. I love this place so much, and so that's why it's all connected. Is I live for the Northwest is what this is. So
you're feeling the heartbeat of the region,
and that's what I've heard a million times. Like, oh, like the beat of Seattle. I'm like, no, but that's like better than what I thought of. Like, that isn't why I got it, but that's better than what I said. So,
God,
I've used that, yeah, but that's not, like I said, I was 18. I got this on my 18th birthday on Christmas Eve of that year. So
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, no, I got it from a guy named Tattoo Joe, who's given me most of my tattoos at this point. This is the only one. I only have 3. This is the only one that I've gotten now from him. He gave me the... Oh, and then I have the SOS one that we got together. So he's giving me half my tattoos.
There you go.
There you go. But I have that gnome on my leg, too, with the basketball and everything. So, yeah, that's a whole
deal.
Yes. It shows you love the city. Yeah, exactly. So I used to love Seattle more than I love it now. But I still...
It's heartbreaking now.
But the Pacific Northwest itself, I was born in Bremerton, and I've lived in this area my entire life. I've never gone anywhere else. I've traveled, but I've never lived anywhere else. So... No, I absolutely live for this area, and even when we inevitably move to try and survive the Civil War, I will still love it here, and eventually I will come back and stake my claim in whatever the fuck this leftist country is called, and I'll take that shit back my damn self.
I like the green too much, man. I like the salmon. I like the crab. I like all the natural resources we have around here.
Yes.
It's unfortunate that due to a bunch of ill-begotten regulation for nonsensical reasons, the ability to tap our own natural resources out here is incredibly limited. But God, man, if shit hit the fan and all of a sudden you need to survive around here, there's so many animals to live off of. Deer and bear and tons of fish and crab and oysters, and if you're one of them hardcore folks, you get into some muscle action.
Yeah.
Man, sea urchin if you're super adventurous, sea cucumber if you're even more adventurous.
There's a guy in Keyport that when all the COVID shit happened and they, closed down fishing and everything, he was going out every day. It was fishing off the dock and shit like that.
How you gonna
catching
stop
2 or 3 fish and just coming in, and now he clams out by the bridge all the time. I saw him on my way here, fucking big old Safeway bag full of clams. Yeah, he'd go out there all the time.
Hell yeah.
No, fuck the state. I'd be surprised if he has a license. He didn't give a shit.
Dude,
that's the same guy that has he lives at the top of this hill right when you come into Keyport. I don't even know how you get to his house, but you can see part of his fence, and it says Trump 2020 spray painted on the fence. That's that guy. Yeah, he don't give a fuck.
Not even a little bit. Yeah, I love, I had a buddy of mine that we both know, who we work with, we'll put it that way. He was out with his buddy doing some clamming the other day and didn't really think about it. His buddy's been doing it forever, and he was out at this one spot, and they, were clamming and got all their stuff, and they come back, and there's a game warden there. Like,
right.
Hey, guys, what you doing? I'm like, oh, we're just clamming. He's like,
regulators.
The beach's closed, right? He's like, oh, I didn't. It was open yesterday. He's like, yeah, it was. Not today.
God.
I was like, damn. But I guess I forget how the story totally happened, but the way it ended was it was a happy resolution, and the game warden was really cool. And
yeah.
I was like, no, that's fine, man. Confusion happens. Unlike my run-ins with game wardens.
Right.
What do you mean? Don't ask me how many shells I can put in this shotgun right now. Oh, that's
The fascism that is inherent within the regulation of hunting is dark. I did not realize
And you're
until
and you're just breaking into it.
I did not realize.
Man.
You start to hear stories, and you're like, bro, you got a ticket for not having a fucking piece of wood in your gun? Like, what are we talking about right now?
Yeah. Yeah, and then the last time I went, too, I didn't check, and I thought I had my dowels with me because you can only have a shotgun that holds 3 rounds, 2 in the tube and 1 in the chamber, 2 plus 1, for whatever reason, and
can't have too much of an advantage on the duck.
Exactly, and we got to our first spot, and I went to go pull the shotgun out, and I was like, oh, shit, I forgot the dowel. So I went out, and I just shaved some fucking branches that I could find and, like, tried to, like, put it in the tube and make it work, and it took me like an hour, but I finally got it to work, and I was like, okay. Even though I'm like 10 miles into the backcountry, I feel comfortable now. Because that would be just my luck to run into a game warden in the middle of fucking nowhere, and he'd be like, hey, man, how many shells can you put in here?
Yeah.
Motherfucker. Oh, man.
No. Okay, so I have 3 quick little stories, stories that, for me, tie together a little bit, right? So the first one it has to do with this law that just passed with catalytic converters, right? There's been an enormous, across the country, because there's been multiple laws like this in different states that have been passed because people are stealing catalytic converters because of the precious metals that are inside of them and then selling them to junkyards, right?
Yeah, I think it's cobalt or something in there.
Yeah.
Some fancy joint in there.
Yeah.
At my last, my old business, luckily it never happened to any of our vehicles, but a bunch of the other businesses in that industrial park got hit one day. They all came in, and all their catalytic converters got stripped out of their cars overnight.
What the fuck does a catalytic converter do? It's on the muffler, right? Or it's in the exhaust system?
It's in the exhaust system, and I'm not a scientist.
It just takes some of the particles out.
It removes the amount of carbon that is put out from the exhaust.
It's on some green shit.
Yeah, it's on some green stuff. Yeah, it's all about emissions control.
So this article is from KDVR, and that's in Colorado.
Platinum.
There you go, platinum also. And I remember hearing a story about it once, and that was a while ago. But we have a law now that has to do with if you own a junkyard or something and you're going to buy a catalytic converter, you have to have paperwork that proves that catalytic converter came out of the car that this person owns.
Oh, okay.
So I would imagine there's a serial number that can be matched to the VIN number on the car. But so, yeah, you have to get this paperwork or else you can be held liable for it. So this story is out of Lakewood, Colorado. Denver police told Fox 31 that there were 500 reported catalytic converters stolen in the first 3 months of this year alone. Woo! That's more than 5 every day. Denver police are warning the public that's not just a costly nuisance, but it could be dangerous as well. Thieves are starting to post an armed lookout to intercept anyone who catches them in the act. And I have seen multiple stories in Seattle, New York, big cities of people coming out of their house to confront people who are stealing their catalytic converter and getting into violent altercations with them. I've seen people discharge firearms. Yeah, I've seen violent shit over catalytic converters.
And I feel like the trope is, generally speaking, the people that are doing that are like tweakers. They're like meth heads, and they're looking. That's how they fund their enterprise. You know, they fund their addiction by stealing this stuff and then finding a chop shop that'll take it. And it is no surprise to me that if you try to have a confrontation with somebody that is that desperate to be trying to give you extra gas mileage by stealing your catalytic converter, that it's going to turn out bad because they're already in a desperate situation where they're trying to steal that from you and it's not a simple endeavor. It's not like it's not something you can just pocket and walk away with.
Right.
You know what I mean? This is an in-depth situation.
It's not too difficult. This story is from Toledo, Washington. Authorities in Washington said they've arrested a man on theft and burglary charges after being caught with dozens of stolen catalytic converters. Lewis County Sheriff's Office said deputies responded to reports of someone entering a business and stealing 26 catalytic converters off of new trucks during the overnight hours on July 13th.
Good
so he
boosted
26 in one night.
Enterprise and individual.
So
busting his ass.
Yes, according to the sheriff's office, this guy was taken into custody, and search warrant for his vehicle led to the recovery of the 26 stolen catalytic converters. 38-year-old is facing charges of second-degree burglary and first-degree theft.
Wow.
So
I got to watch some YouTube videos about how you remove a catalytic converter.
Well, it looks like if that's actually the catalytic converter, it doesn't look like it's that hard.
No.
Like, it looks like it's just a couple of brackets that you just unbolt and
it also looks like you could just make a much more theft-proof endeavor, some kind of system that you can't just fucking bolt off like that.
Some type of housing.
Yeah. Versus passing a law, but
so it looks like it's just two U-clamps with bolts on either, like nuts on either side, and you just unscrew the bolts and pull it out, and then you just separate it from the muffler or from the exhaust system and just pull it off.
I think Bilbo knows what he's talking about. So depending on the car, it's how easy it is to get off.
And that's makes sense, as is everything else in a vehicle. One thing is going to be take 2 seconds. The other one, you're going to have to remove half the fucking engine to take it off. So, no, I like that. So, I'm always torn about stuff like this because I don't like the idea of making it more difficult for a business owner to make money. He's just trying to sell shit, He shouldn't have to worry about whether or not this item is stolen, but it implicates him in the theft and deprivation of someone else of their property, and it inadvertently involves him in this problem that he now has someone's property that he sold to somebody else, so he doesn't belong to him, but he shouldn't be out money for having sold this to somebody even though he doesn't own this object.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
At what point does his, where is his responsibility kick in to ensure that the property that this individual is selling him is indeed that person's property?
Right.
How much due diligence is involved? I know that, we have a really big scrapyard just out of, in Bremerton, just out of the city proper, essentially,
right.
Navy City Metal and stuff like that. And they've had, they already have existing kind of practices at that facility where they don't just take whatever it is. They build a relationship with the individual, and generally speaking, they have to be like a legitimate business to do business there. And it can cause problems, I'm sure, for them, but it also helps their own liability at that point because they don't want to be, scrapping a bunch of boosted shit.
Especially wire, copper wire and stuff like that. If
there's a lot of red flags and shit.
Yeah, if you come with not even spools of it, but like rolls of it,
Yeah.
It's like, and where do you get all of this copper wiring from?
Yeah, and if you're like a legitimate contractor that has a fucking business license number and you have a reputation in the community and stuff like that, and you're going there to sell off the scrap from construction jobs and shit like that, that's a more comfortable situation for that person to be in because he knows he's legitimate versus I've seen it happen before where there are guys that will just swing around to different construction sites and then legitimately just go on and try to talk to the supervisors and be like, hey, if I see you guys got a bunch of scrap metal you guys dug up out there, do you have any plan to get rid of that? I could take it off your hands for you.
Right.
And a lot of times the contractors are like, yeah, man, fucking take it. But the dude, he looks like a fucking D-gen and, he's driving some beat up little thing, but, he's just scrapping.
Right.
Does that guy deserve to not, does he deserve to not try to make a living by doing it as a, as weird as the way that might be?
It's a legitimate way to make money. Yeah.
But,
it's like people who mow someone's lawn. I wouldn't want to live that way, but if you want to fucking mow lawns for however much you're going to charge per lawn, we should, Yeah,
I get real hesitant when it comes to like that, mercantilism style regulations and stuff like that, government control. You need fucking 30 different forms to be able to sell your fucking sheep to the butcher shop down the road or something like that.
And this is why I'd like to think that like insurance would be involved. If someone steals your catalytic converter and they sell it, because some of these articles are saying I don't know enough about cars to decide. Some of these articles are saying it can essentially total your vehicle because of how much it costs for you to replace your catalytic converter. That if your car is not new enough, then it's removing half the value of your car and it's totaled anyway. So your insurance company is just going to write you a check for a brand new car. So.
Oh, yeah, with all the precious metal, there's a reason it's being stolen.
Right. The hang up on that, obviously, is you can't fucking drive your car without a catalytic converter on it, is what it sounds like to me,
Generally speaking, you just get more horsepower.
So,
but if generally, the reason most manufacturers are putting those things on and
you can
stuff,
be fined if you don't have one also.
Which and
makes
it depends
sense.
on where you live, but most places nowadays have emissions regulations.
Yes.
And, like in, say, like the state of Massachusetts, every year when you get your registration and stuff like that, you have to do another emissions test.
And here it's based on the county. Like in King County, if you live in King, you have to do an emissions test. I know when my mom was dating a guy whose brother lived in like Burien, he would register his cars over here so he didn't have to do the emissions test, and then he just lived in Burien. So he would just drive over here and register his cars and then drive back home. It was worth it to not have to. I don't know how much they cost because I've never had to do one, but I can't be cheap if he's willing to drive from Burien over an hour from Burien to Kitsap County to register his car. So
it's got to be worth the price of admission, though.
Yeah,
especially if you think if you got to redo it every year or something like that.
Yes,
that's just another tax on you having a piece of property.
Your fucking car. And he had a big old van, and that's why he did it, because he had just a fucking super old van. Yeah, you can drive it. It actually helps with some cars for miles per gallon and horsepower. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with the recycling of exhaust and all that. And I'm not a mechanic or anything, but I've always heard that if you just have a straight exhaust, the engine works more efficiently.
I pretty much only know about things that have broken in my vehicle. Right. That's about the extent of my knowledge, is the things that have broken. I've researched them and say, I understand now what this piece does. Yeah. And then we'll replace it and move on. So,
and eventually, after a number of years, you just know your car inside and out.
Exactly. I have a rudimentary understanding of the workings of a combustion engine. Right. I understand the concept behind what is happening. I could not lay out all of the pieces that are involved in it. I understand the general concept of the micro explosions held inside of a piece of metal that move the rock. I get that, but
that's about as far as I go. That makes sense to me.
That's crazy that someone did that, but I'm here for it, and I love the car. That's about builds up more carbon.
More carbon.
Yeah.
Man, I love all this green talk and stuff lately about removing carbon and lowering carbon emissions and all this stuff. And I'm like, Tim Pool on IRL, maybe sometime last week or something like that, he was asking Ian, he goes, what are trees made out of?
What are trees made out of?
Carbon. Oh, yeah. So it's like, because they absorb carbon and, produce oxygen. And I'm like, I wonder what, how that works out. I need to talk to some scientists about this shit. Because if you get rid of all the carbon, it would make sense that nothing could grow. Because matter doesn't just materialize out of nothing. So I'd be really interested in that. But it got me thinking about this stuff. And there's just all this, we gotta cut back carbon, remove your carbon footprint and all this stuff. I'm like, well, but then how are the trees gonna grow, man? There needs to be some. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's carbon in your poop and your farts and all that type of shit. All the waste and everything.
I think everything is basically some form of carbon.
I would be willing to. I'd be willing to bet that there is a certain amount of carbon emissions, artificially made carbon emissions from cars and shit like that we benefit from. That as a race or as a species, we probably can't make enough carbon to benefit. I have no fucking idea what I'm talking about. We probably can't make enough naturally to do whatever needs to be done at this point. So I bet if you had to strike a perfect balance, they'd be we need you to produce this much. You got to produce still a little bit, not as much as you're doing. That's too much, but you still some, because or else you won't have enough.
Yeah.
It's so that's all. I have no fucking idea what I'm talking about, but don't.
Right.
What makes the matter of a tree made up? I was thinking of the question. Anything that has the cellular structures makes carbon or turns into carbon. Yeah, that's the type of shit that I can't conceptualize.
I wish I was a
that's
scientist.
Beyond me. Yeah, when you start talking at the cellular level. It's the same deal. I understand the basic function of what you're saying to me, but it's way beyond.
I never took chemistry, bro. I don't understand none of this.
No. I operate on this plane. The one that we live on, that's where my brain can work
there
at.
You go.
That's it. I consider the philosophies of human beings.
There you go.
That's it. I don't even go to the religious or the theocratic. None of that. I don't even involve myself in that. I'm I don't know. I'll figure that out when I'm done. I'm not even going to worry about that now, because no one person is right.
Right.
So, I don't even concern myself with those things.
That's all right, buddy. The world needs philosophers and scientist.
So the second tier of this chain that I'm drawing out here,
Yes.
right, is an article that I have from the Kitsap Sun, and it is entitled "Murders Up, Police Staffing Down," says Washington Crime Report, right? The number of murders, robberies, serious assaults, and other violent crimes rose significantly in Washington last year, while the number of officers available to respond to them continued to plummet. The head of the organization that collects the data said Wednesday. The Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, released its annual report on crime, finding that violent crime overall increased 12.3% in the state. Although the murder rate, 4 per 100,000 residents, was slightly higher in the 1980s and early 90s, the number of murders, 325, was the most since the association started tracking the data in 1980. It was up from 302 in 2020 and 201 before the pandemic in 2019. The national murder rate also soared in 2020. So I would imagine that the murder rate 4 per 100,000, because they were also talking about per capita. Meanwhile, there were 495 fewer police officers employed in the state, which already had the nation's fewest officers per capita, said Stephen Strachan, the association's executive director, that left Washington with 10,736 full-time officers, a drop of 4.4% to serve a population that rose 116,000 to more than 7.7 million. We gained over 100,000 people last year.
Hot
as
dog.
a state.
That's a lot of people. I mean, I could see that. You know, we're kind of like California light up here.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people that might have been a little too, saw the governments get a little overzealous. We're like, Washington, Northwest is still pretty progressive, but they're not totally psychotic like, we are here in LA. Let's go up there. It's pretty. Over the last few years, I've seen a lot of people from California move up here.
So, okay, this is stupid. The murder rate, 4 per 100,000 residents, was slightly higher in the 80s and 90s. The number of murders, 325, was the most since the association started the tracking data in the 1980s. So that's because there's more people here than there was in the 1980s and 90s. That murder rate is irrelevant, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, because if you do that per capita,
yes,
then it's kind of like saying that it's the 2% increase.
Yeah, that doesn't mean
random
anything.
statistic.
Because you just said there were more murders, but the murder rate is down.
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that just means that if on the whole per capita, it seems like the rate went down, but the sheer overall numbers went up, probably due to increased population growth.
Yes. So we saw over the state, and particularly in Seattle, we saw an enormous decline in police officers for multiple different reasons. Right.
Huge.
There were. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm trying to find.
The governor just had a massive increase in funding for additional police officers in particular Seattle too.
So I found it. So George Floyd, right? That was one thing. When the George Floyd riot started, there was an enormous amount of police officers that quit, also retired. And this is. I want to stop here for a second because it's like this weird loophole almost that I've heard be used in multiple different outlets. And I'm talking about, well, there's been an enormous amount of retirements, in police officers. Okay, yeah, there was a shitload of people who chose to retire when they could have continued working or would have continued working. There was a shitload of people who retired early instead of just quitting, right?
Yeah.
So they retired early. That this matters. This context matters. And it's like I said, I think it's a loophole in this discussion to say, well, there's been so many retirements because there was a bunch of people who retired before they had originally planned to because of these numerous different things, because of George Floyd, the COVID regulations. There was also the vaccine mandate throughout the state. There was, hundreds of officers that quit throughout the state because of the vaccine mandates.
Yeah.
So
the generalized push to be anti-cop for that particular reason, because just it's the ACAB stuff. I have a very my take on law enforcement is very it's very anti-law enforcement, but for a completely different reason. What we saw during our great summer of love, as the Seattle mayor put it, was this blatant anti-hate for any kind of authoritarian law enforcement due to misguided, misinformed reasons, because cops are racist and they're all just killing black people, or, they're whatever it is, they're bigoted and they're hateful and all this. That's what that push was about.
Right.
I have a principled stance against it, but it has nothing to do with that. But that was not the overall push. And it was nationwide. And in some states, we've seen for lack of a better term, a refunding of police after the massive defund the cops movement went around. But we, in particular, here in Seattle, they were one of the first cities to go really hardcore progressive with their policing system, and they have been well before George Floyd and all that stuff happened. And they've never ever been able to recover from that.
Well, and it's hilarious because I told you I found that new local podcast. I don't remember what it's called, but I was listening to. It's called like Morning Brew or fucking something like that. That I don't think you ever followed it or listened to it, but it's one that I've listened to just a few times. And
Yeah, Seattle Now.
Seattle Now, yes.
By
And
KUOW.
And they just did an episode earlier this week that said Seattle's plan to hire 500 police officers. And in this, they said, well, Seattle never, defunded the police. So in a matter of 5 seconds, I found an article after a summer, and this is from NBC News, after a summer of protests, Seattle cuts police department budget by nearly 17%. And if you go into the article, the Seattle City Council on Monday cuts its police department budget by nearly 17% in a shift that grew out of this past summer's national protest against systemic racism. The panel's 2021 spending plan called for $340 million to be allocated to Seattle's police department, down from $409 million this year, representatives of the council and mayor said Tuesday. So while they did not cut the department, right? They did not hack off a bunch of officers. They cut the budget, which forced them to make cuts. Because we talked about this. That's part of the reason that Carmen Best quit was because they were going to make her fire a bunch of minority police officers she had just fucking hired.
Yep.
And she said, no, I'm not doing that. So now the new mayor, Bruce Harrell, and the sitting police chief, the interim police chief, that's what I'm looking for, Adrian Diaz, are working on a new plan. They're asking for what I said, $2 million, I think I told you yesterday, for 500 additional officers and to shore up declining police staffing that he says is at crisis levels. And this is from Axios now. The latest, Herald, joined by interim police chief Adrian Diaz, said at a news conference that he's asking the city council for $1 million to help pay for his plan, which includes hiring bonuses of up to $7,500 for new recruits and $30,000 for officers transferring from other departments, paying $1,000 to city employees who refer officer candidates that are hired, and bringing on a recruitment director and other specialists. The plan also widens the officer applicant tool to prioritize hiring more black candidates and other police of color because they just fucking fired a bunch of them, bilingual recruits, and those with other diverse qualities. Yes, but Harrell asked for another $1 million for police recruitment on top of $1 million already approved in May. Does not cover a key part of his strategy, a package of pay, vacation, and training incentives aimed at retaining already employed officers. They want to add to the retirements, the pensions, and stuff like that. The cost of such retention bonuses remains unknown and is still being negotiated as part of a new collective bargaining agreement with the Seattle Police Officers Guild. Those negotiations likely won't finalize before the city's next budget process in the fall. So the SPD has 950 deployable officers, and that's the lowest they've seen since 91. 950 for the entirety of Seattle.
God, I remember...
Over 400 officers have exited the department since 2019, including dozens who left in the wake of 2020's tumultuous racial justice protests and calls to defund the police. At the same time, the Seattle's department hiring has not kept pace. So far this year, 109 officers have left and 35 have been hired. It is fucking July, and they've hired 35 people.
Dude.
Why the fuck would you want to be a cop in Seattle?
Yeah.
The Seattle Police Department, even prior to this, had a horrific record of abuse on citizens.
Yeah.
Horrific record.
Yeah.
Especially minorities. Horrific.
Yep. That's why they were one of the first to kind of go really, really progressive in policing policies.
Yes.
Because it was a serious problem for a long time. And you got to remember, too, 950 for Seattle, bro.
Yeah.
That's not that many.
And that was their argument in the Seattle Now was, well, they didn't cut the budget. They reallocated that money to different types of policing.
Oh, yeah. Community outreach programs.
So you cut it from the police department budget and you gave that money to other people and expected them to do community policing, which is fine if that's how you want to look at it. But don't tell me you didn't fucking cut the police budget when that's exactly what you did, from $409 million to $370 million. When you can look at the numbers, don't try and fucking gaslight me into telling me that you didn't cut the budget.
Yeah.
When we can see the numbers, dog.
Yeah, it was, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but back when I was living in Long Island, way back in the day, we're probably talking 08, 09, probably somewhere around there. I would be driving into Queens, and on the big expressway going in, called the LIE, the Long Island Expressway, massive billboards recruiting for Seattle PD. And
In
it was
New
like
York?
in New York City. Yes, on Long Island. I actually, and that's I because that was there, and I knew I was eventually going to end up back here. I had started the process and interviewed and did the whole 9 yards before making the best decision ever in my life and saying I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they were offering like ridiculous signing bonuses, transfer bonuses to NYPD, and
30
all these
grand.
different things. Yeah, and I think that was the number even back then too. But it has been a serious problem for Seattle for a very long time, and I question the sanity of the people that are going, well, I don't understand why. Because it's been happening for so long, it begs the question, what kind of environment are you building for yourself that is making it that nobody wants to be a law enforcement officer in your city?
And this one, this is another article that says,
Wake the fuck up.
it's from the ACLU. Yes, but and this from Axios led to that. Yes, but some police reform advocates and other critics contend that SPD doesn't spend its $363 million budget well and doesn't need more money for hiring. Okay, we also spend millions of dollars in the city of Seattle to deal with homelessness, and the problem only gets worse.
Yeah.
They don't spend money well on anything in any big city because government, as almost by a rule, ineffectively spends money. It is ineffective by fucking rule, by essence of what it is.
Yeah.
So that's not even a legitimate, but this links to an ACLU Washington article exploring the divestment/reinvestment approach to policing, an ACLU Washington blog series. And so this
That's an enthralling series.
Given the start of 2022 budget deliberations at the city of Seattle, this blog post updates our original Follow the Money post from 2020 showing how the Seattle Police Department budget remains outsized compared to spending on other critical city departments. In 2021, Mayor Durkin, there's also fucking open gunfight that happens in Seattle all of the time.
Oh, yeah.
Rainier Avenue, there is gunfire all there
Constant.
all of the time.
Yeah.
So
We're at the home of the chest chop,
it's
man.
ludicrous. I know. My point with this whole thing is in the vein of you. My point is not that we need more police officers. That is not my point. My point is while all of this is happening, it has the weird underpinning of we're also trying to take your ability to defend yourself and your family and your own property all at the same time. While we are refusing to do anything that even closely aligns with our original intent of government to actually fucking protect you and your property.
Yeah.
We're also going to limit your ability to do the exact same thing.
Those are they're just civil disputes.
They're just civil disputes. It doesn't matter. It's what do they call it? It's mutual combat. It's mutual combat. It doesn't matter. Just like the shit in Chicago, 7 people are dead. It doesn't matter. It's mutual combat. They were shooting at each other. It's fine. They were shooting at each other. It's mutual combat. We live in a mutual combat state, so it doesn't matter. And Bilbo earlier, he said that the early retirement also affected the pilot industry 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really shady way to be spinning this by talking about, well, how many people retired? Well, if the choice is we're going to fire you, you can get the vaccine or you can choose to retire early. I'm going to choose to retire early. I'll take a slightly lower pension because my pension is guaranteed anyway because I belong to this fucking sick ass union.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get the fuck out. I've already done my 15 or whatever. I was going to do 20. I don't need it. I'll stop at 15, and I just don't give a fuck.
I'd rather not have a stroke at 50,000 feet.
Yeah, so not even that. I mean the police, right? All these people who've worked there for however long, and they worked there 15 years. I'll do 20, 25 years because you're only 45. If that's the main career that you've had, you can be a cop for a really long time.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So, especially in the Kitsap County, if you're a Kitsap County sheriff, your job is probably relatively chill. You know what I'm saying? Some of those guys are pretty fucking fat. So, probably have pretty chill. Even the guys who are on patrol in cars, the job is probably pretty chill. So there's obviously times where things go crazy because there's a lot of drug use and stuff like that here. But overall, it seems like it's pretty chill. So
and I will say just to add on to this too, because there's so little context behind it. Like you said before, like the retirements. Yeah, a lot of people retired. Well, why were they retiring?
Why?
And then on top of that, the people that are staying, I guarantee you that with a reduction of officer coverage, there is an increased requirement for hours. So more required overtime for, like the big city events that are happening all the time. And so you're going to get officer burnout for the people that continue to stay anyways. And they're going to get burnt out and either make really bad decisions and their ability to police is going to go down, or they're just going to fucking leave because they're burnt to shit and they'll probably get a better job somewhere else where they're not as burnt out. I mean, it's a compounding problem.
Yes.
When you continually attack a force on which you completely rely on due to your other reduction of people's rights to defend themselves, and you rely solely on the enforcers of the state at that point, and then all you do is come down on them. It should be absolutely no surprise to you that they're gonna fucking walk, and it's gonna continue to happen. You can't just throw money at that problem and fix it.
And there was all kinds of, even in the wake of this 2020, the way that they changed the regulations of the police officers and then had to amend them during the pandemic, right? We talked to Officer Brian about that, they changed the way they had to go about like arresting people and the detaining people. The cops could put their hands on people and stuff like that. And hospital workers and mental health workers were upset that the police couldn't do more to intervene. They're like, you literally asked for this. You live in Seattle. You asked for the police department to be cut and changed in this way. And now I cannot assist you in the way that you're asking me to do so. He told us that straight out in these DMs I was sharing with him.
Yeah.
That they have limited my ability to help people, to help mental health professionals assist people who are having mental health issues. And now they are upset about the things they have asked us to do. So
that's what happens. You make severe regulatory decisions based off of ideology and emotion.
Yeah. So
choices have consequences, man. That's how that works, and you can't just blame the consequences on. You have to look at the choices you make.
Yeah.
And adjust accordingly.
And you don't love to see it. Eventually this is going to start to spill into people's private property, and people are going to start to get hurt.
Oh yeah. I mean, everything about that, when crime increases in a city, particularly within cities, because they're so packed, they're so on top of each other. Everything is all on top of each other in a tiny, tiny little space. When you increase crime, every aspect of life in that city goes down. From your entire economy goes down because businesses goes down, because residents don't want to live there because it's fucking dangerous, because businesses won't move in there. They'll be moving out of the city. Everything is affected by that increased homelessness at that point. I mean, everything goes downhill.
Trust for other people, because you don't know who's a criminal and who's not a criminal, because the crime is just generally up.
Yeah.
So you have to be more aware of your surroundings than you. Not that you shouldn't be in jail. We've talked about that anyway. But a regular soccer mom, it doesn't like to have to look over her shoulder all the time. She wants to feel safe when she goes places. And she should be able to feel safe when she goes places. But when shit like that happens, when the town that you grew up in, Bremerton, starts to get fucking sketch, there's certain stores and areas that you just don't go to.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't have to avoid certain areas of your small town because crime is so bad.
Yeah, and then it perpetuates crime at that point too, because the lack of economic opportunity just increases crime. It's a what do you call that? Like an increasing problem, just exponentially increases the problem and continues to spiral down. Yeah. It's a compounding issue.
We expect cops to be able to do the job of multiple different professions and then demonize them when they make a mistake.
Yeah. There's little grace given to, agents of the state. And again, I have my own issues with that, obviously, but
and part of that goes into an abdication of people's personal responsibility for their own safety. You should not be depending on someone else for your safety. We talked about this. The greatest and most recent example is the Uvalde shooting. You should not be relying on somebody else to protect your family. You should be able to do it yourself, and anybody else's attempt to limit your ability to defend yourself and your family is immoral, is inherently immoral. And so this type of shit, and that's why my undertone of all of this is that they're also trying to limit your ability to defend yourself, because that's at the core of all of this.
Yeah.
All this crime is happening. Other people are being murdered. Their shit is being stolen from them. You don't even have the ability to defend yourself. They're trying to take that away from you. They are actively limiting that ability all at the same time, and that's the real message.
Yeah.
This should be something you should be able to handle your goddamn self. You should be able to walk out of your house. I'm not saying you should shoot people over your car. You should be able to walk out of your house, point a fucking gun at somebody and say, get the fuck away from my car, get your hands off my catalytic converter, and they should have to walk the fuck away or else they're shot. I find this to be an acceptable circumstance for you to insert yourself into. The state does not find that. They're limiting your ability to defend yourself and defend your property. That is at the core of everything. Property rights and personal safety, that is the end-all, be-all.
Yeah.
So, while this is important, I would beg everyone listening, do not allow this to distract you, that they are also trying to, I would say the end goal is to take your ability to defend yourself. But right now, all I can factually say is that they are actively limiting your ability to defend yourself. So, all these, we have magazine laws and all that stuff type here. I mean, we're hoping to see these things be challenged under these new decisions that came out under New York under the Supreme Court and things like that. but we will see.
Yeah, we have no problem with magazine shortages in this household. So
I saw that. I know where to go.
remember that.
Yes.
Oh, man. Yeah, look at the mall shooting in Indiana. So just a really quick aside to that. We talked about this earlier today with a buddy of ours. A 40-yard shot
Yeah.
with...
somewhere between 40 to 50 yards.
with a
9
pistol.
mil. Yep.
Jesus.
Good for him.
That, and to, because we fucked around at the range like that, doing long-distance shooting, and the way he went about that, to post up on a pillar of some kind, try to steady the gun at 40 yards and accurately put that dude down is fucking impressive. And to be able to have the mindset of, controlling, whatever is going on in your head, to be able to make those accurate shots at 40 yards, that's not an accident.
No.
That dude was proficient in the firearm that he carried, and he knew exactly what to do and how to do it. That dude is a fucking hero.
Yes.
And man, highly, highly impressive. Just from a standard marksmanship point. Fuck.
Yeah, it's not simple. 40 yards with a handgun is not simple. Handguns are not as simple as people think they are that don't shoot handguns. They are much more difficult than rifles, shit like that. Way harder. Yeah, we're out of...
Welcome to corn country.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, and my end lesson or takeaway from all that would be the similar one that I've seen from a lot of different people is carry everywhere. And we've talked about that on this show consistently. Unless there is physical infrastructure hindering me from doing so, I have a firearm on me at all times. Unless there is a infrastructure, a metal detector, or someone stopping me from doing so, I have a gun at all times. Fuck the sign. Fuck what anybody's saying to you. Doesn't matter. Your safety and the safety of your family and the people you love is more important than some fucking law, some ticket, some fucking bullshit. That doesn't matter. Don't listen to that. That is nonsense. That is absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
Carry the gun that you want. Carry the gun that makes you feel comfortable, and get comfortable and train with that firearm for this fucking reason. I carry every day and keep my hunting rifle in my truck.
Fuck yeah.
I love it. Bilbo, welcome to the fucking show. Welcome to Salt of the Streets. Yeah,
also, what kind of hunting rifle do you have? What
yeah,
caliber
no,
are you
100%.
shooting?
Yeah, no, we're out here. And we've talked about this so many million times before. I'll lay it out for Bilbo. My intent, right? I carry a Glock 20 every day. It says 10 mil. Somewhere I'm gonna get me a 9, and I'm gonna put this one of those micro Ronies, that little conversion kit.
Ooh.
Slap that thing in there. So it's going to be nice.
I'm excited about my little extendo mag that I got on that thing.
Yeah.
It's really sweet.
Yep.
It's good. I wouldn't carry that though. It's too big. If you're going extended mag, it's too big. I've noticed. It's just not there.
Joseph.
There
you are, Lape here. How are y'all doing?
Hey,
Hope you had a good week. Glad to see you here. Bilbo. There it is. God, I love all of you guys so much. I'm so happy to be here. Do you have any more local stories? Do you want to hit Trump in this first part?
I think we should. Yeah, we could. We're about an hour.
Yeah, we're just over an hour, and we are an hour and 7 minutes in here. So we will do. This is the last portion of part 1 here. Yeah, this is Donald Trump on 2024. Oh my God, I didn't know you could do that. I would have been sending you these articles the whole time. Now that I know, part 2.
Oh yeah, and I don't have my extra webcam on here.
No, that's okay.
So this was a. This was really interesting.
Yes.
Because for multiple reasons, but in New York Magazine,
it's a great picture.
That's a great picture. I saw that on a book cover the other day,
Really?
yesterday when we were at the fucking bookstore, Port Townsend.
What book was it? Do you remember?
It was a, you know what? It might have been a copy of New York Magazine. Now that I think about it, which would make sense. But for some fucking reason, this idiot on July 14th. Gave an interview to New York Magazine, of all places, who, God, I wish I just would have clipped Tim Pool's version of it, because he did a really quick read of the first paragraph.
In his Trump impression?
No, as he just did it really, really quick. It made Ben Shapiro seem slow. It was hilarious, right? But they opened up the article because he gave an interview with New York Magazine about his possibility of running for office in 2024 again. And they opened the article up as such. Donald Trump was impeached twice, lost the 2020 election by more than 7 million votes, is entangled in investigations by federal prosecutors over the Capitol insurrection and other mishandling of classified White House documents, and over election interference, and the District of Columbia Attorney General over financial fraud in the Presidential Inaugural Committee, and the Manhattan District Attorney over financial fraud at the Trump Organization, and the New York State Attorney General over financial fraud at the Trump Organization, and the Westchester County District Attorney over financial fraud at the Trump Organization and the Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney over criminal election interference in Georgia, and the Securities and Exchange Commission over rules violations in plans to take his social media company public through a SPAC, and the House Select Committee on January 6th, whose hearings are underway, are the runaway TV rating hit of the summer. Yet on Monday, July 11th, he was in a fantastic mood. You just gave an interview to an organization you knew was going to open up that piece like that. But he goes on, it's a big, long, stupid, fucking way too many worded piece about this thing. And essentially he says he's just waiting for the right time to announce that he will be running, because you cannot officially announce without certain legal implications and things like this. And so, a lot of politicians do that. I think Hillary Clinton did that when she ran. Because that's when your funding mechanisms really get limited. Right. When you just have a pact out there and you're just doing speeches and whatever, they can throw as much money they want at you. But the minute you become a candidate, then you have certain amounts of money that you can only get from everybody. So everybody gets their fat stack in the Clinton Foundation and the Trump Organization or whatever that. But I
fucking hate it so much.
He unofficially announced that he's officially thinking about when to announce.
Just waiting for the right time.
Yeah. So, which I'm assuming is going to be after midterms, probably in December or something like that. I think
that's what we all figured, right?
Yeah.
We're just how are you going to not do it?
Yeah.
Who else is going to do it?
I think the only thing that would bar him from doing it is if he legally can't.
Right.
And that's what the Jan 6 committee is really trying to do. And
and we'll talk about some Jan 6 stuff in
the
the
next one.
Part.
I got a really interesting New York Post article that came out from the editorial staff yesterday, or it was either yesterday or this morning, about how the Jan 6 temporary closed out their summer session.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Really long story short, the New York Post is on board with him never running and not being able to hold office again now, which is an interesting stance from the New York Post, because as I think we'll discuss in the next segment, a lot of older school Republicans, I think, got reasons for it during the last portion of the committee hearings, the prime time closeout. But what are your thoughts on T-Dog running again? What implications? Assuming he's going to, let's just assume it's going to be the most logical point would be after midterms, so that it doesn't necessarily affect any of the candidates trying to run for primaries now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on what that would look like and what the effects would be?
I expected they would. The worst thing that I think will happen will be what it was the first time around, is this the social nature of the country will get even more chaotic than it is now. But I don't think even him leaving office quelled things. Even him being kicked off of Twitter and not being directly in the public eye, they're still doing everything they can to focus on him all of the time. They're constantly talking about him. So So I don't even know how much it could ramp back up, because I don't feel like it has gone down. It feels that the country is just as divisive as it was when he was president.
Yeah, if anything, it's probably gotten worse for other reasons. But the corporate press they're not hiding the fact that they still blame everything on him. Every trouble and woe in the world stems from the Trump world, or the pro-Trump, the MAGA crowd, the movement that he created.
Even the whole coup on January 6th.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's one of the big notes I have here is this entire thing, even though they have people in the committee hearings that are testifying that were arrested and spent time in jail, everything is Donald Trump's fault. It is almost like he had divine control over everyone at that protest that day and everyone who went to the Capitol.
Yeah.
It wasn't until he told them to go that they could go. There wasn't anything anyone else could do. You couldn't have brought in the police. You couldn't have brought in the National Guard. You couldn't have done anything to make them go unless Donald Trump told them to go.
And that is the narrative that they
Which
create.
is the craziest thing I've ever fucking heard. That on one end, we're going to charge hundreds of people with crimes and put hundreds of people in jail, but they don't have any personal responsibility when it comes to the political applications or implications of this situation. It's like he was fucking Jim Jones.
Yeah.
He had them all drinking the Kool-Aid. They were poisoned. They had no choice. He forced them to do it. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And one of the articles I was reading, we'll get deeper into it, but one of the articles I was reading earlier was saying that one of the police officers was testifying that she saw protesters with guns at the Capitol. Mm-hmm. I don't buy it. I don't believe that. I don't believe that if people had guns there, that the only person who got shot would have been Ashley Babbitt. I don't believe that.
Well, it doesn't fit with the narrative that you painted, that they were all extra violent and using makeshift weapons and all this other thing. Because if they had real weapons...
Why would they not use the guns?
Yeah.
They're using flagpoles. They're willing to beat people to death with a fire extinguisher like you said that day and then change the story but never said anything about it. If they're willing to do all of this, but they're not willing to actually pull the trigger and try and overthrow. They're in the halls of the Senate. They're in the Senate chambers. And the most they're going to do is just take pictures, take selfies, take fucking Nancy Pelosi's lectern.
Yeah. That doesn't seem like a violent coup.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And not allowing any middle ground of it, of this is either the worst thing that's ever happened and it's a direct threat to our entirety government and the entire way that we live, or you don't think that it happened, and you don't think that it's a coup, and you don't think the election is real, and it's either one or the other. You can't think that this was a bad idea, and you can't disagree with it and think Donald Trump's actions were horrible, and also not think that it was a violent coup that actually was a threat to our democracy or our government.
It was a direct attack on our democracy.
Right. It's impossible to hold those two ideas at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's going to be the downfall of this. That's why people aren't watching this.
Yeah, and if you would have called it what it was, which was a violent riot,
Capitol riots, just like we have every time here, was the Capitol riots.
If it was a riot like it was, then you don't have that. You're not allowed to build a narrative where Trump was the sole responsible entity who was responsible for inciting and responsible for removing it,
right?
For telling everybody to go. He could call the shots because he was the shot caller, and we'll get way more into this stuff in the next segment and stuff when we start talking about Jan 6 hearings and all that.
6.
But yeah, I don't. So let's kind of divert back to the election part of it. If there's been a lot of talk about Ron DeSantis, obviously, possibly taking on the mantle for that. Would you think that if when Trump announces, do you think that will close out the GOP primary possibility and nobody will run against him with any real effectiveness?
I think they'll definitely run. I don't think it's going to stop anyone from trying to challenge him, because I think there are probably a lot of Republicans that don't necessarily think that he'll make it. I think there are probably a lot of Republicans that think that they can take him over. Even with the control he has there's enough division and enough concern and question about him as a leader and all these other things happening, that entire paragraph of stuff, that whether it is realistic or not, I think there are people that are going to convince themselves that they can do it.
There it is.
Yep. That's what I'm drinking, the BSB 103.
Yeah,
I have here.
That's the high test.
Yeah, it's nice.
I'd be drinking too, but I'm on a sober kick.
Not me.
Yeah, no, it causes problems.
So I'm interested to see it. I'm not.
I think things are going to get rocky.
And I don't have any way to get I don't trust any of these polls enough to think that they're giving me an accurate look into the mind of the Republican voting base.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people fuck with Donald Trump, and I know in a good way. And I know the more that this January 6th stuff happened, things like this where everything gets blamed Donald Trump, the more people see that, and even the ones who aren't down for him think he couldn't possibly be at fault for all of these things.
Yeah.
This
just pumps his base up, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you, to be honest. I don't think that when that announcement comes, I think there's going to be some really rocky shit that happens. A lot of protests and stuff are going to happen. Some violence is going to come up. But to be honest, I have to pee really bad.
Yeah.
And we're getting close. I want to save a little bit of time for segment 2. So I think if we can close this up.
I'm ready.
Everybody will be back in 3 minutes for part 2.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat everything.